Hello everyone, welcome to this video. I am Prapti Kanakya from Vinod Kothari and Company. As a compliance professional, we come across many queries from our clients or from the management of the company asking whether the entity itself is a FOCC or not, whether the investment that they are intending to make will be considered as downstream investment or not, what are the compliance requirements for making downstream investment, etc. So in this video, we will be understanding what is downstream investment, what is FOCC, what compliance are required to be ensured while making downstream investment. So let's begin. I will just share my screen. So we all know that whenever there is any flow of funds from India to outside India or vice versa, FEMA comes into picture. In the given case, since the concept of downstream investment flows from the concept of foreign investment, and therefore the rules or the norms that are applicable to foreign investment will be applicable to the downstream investment. We all know that for foreign investment, we need to comply with the FEMA Non-Debt Instrument Rules 2019, which is framed by central government. Master Directions on Foreign Investment in India, framed by Reserve Bank of India, and the Consolidated FDI Policy, framed by Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. So now let's understand what is foreign investment. So in a layman's term, when a foreign investor is investing in the Indian businesses, it is termed as foreign investment. In legal language, when a person resident outside India is investing in the equity instruments of an Indian company, it is termed on a repatriation basis. It is termed as foreign investment. So who is a person resident outside India? In case the person resident outside India is an individual, if he has stayed for more than 182 days outside India, he would be a person resident outside India. And in case it is a business structure like LLP, company, corporate, etc., it should have been incorporated or established outside India to be termed as person resident outside India or a PROI. What is equity instruments? Equity instrument refers to the equity shares of the Indian company or any convertible instruments like compulsory convertible preference shares, compulsory convertible debentures, or warrants. Capital represents the capital of an LLP, and the Indian entity represents Indian company and an LLP. Repatriation basis means when the investor is selling off the investment, the funds would not remain in India. It would be repatriated back to the other country or the host country. Now, when the Indian entity, which has received foreign investment, invests further into another Indian entity or a company, it will be termed as downstream investment. But in here, the Indian entity has to be an FOCC, that means foreign owned or controlled company, to identify the investments made by it as a downstream investment. Let's understand what is FOCC. Foreign represents person resident outside India. Ownership means in case of a company, the person resident outside India is holding more than 50% of ownership in the equity instruments of the company. And in case of an LLP, the PROI is holding more than 50% in the capital of the LLP and has majority of profit share. Control refers to the right of PROI to appoint majority of directors or control management of policy decisions of the company, which can be by way of shareholding rights, management rights, or shareholders agreements or voting agreements. And in case of an LLP, control refers to the right of a PROI to appoint majority of designated partners who would have control over all the policies of an LLP. So either the Indian entity would be foreign owned or foreign controlled company or both. So if an Indian entity is identified as an FOCC, any investment made by it would be termed as downstream investment. And the Indian entity which is receiving such downstream investment, for it will be called as indirect foreign investment. Now, the question would arise that in case of a mutual fund or an alternative investment fund, if these funds are raising funds or issuing units to a foreign investor and investing these funds into another Indian companies or LLPs, will it be termed as downstream investment? Here, we will look at the sponsor or manager to identify downstream investment and not at the investor of the investment vehicle. So, if a sponsor or manager is an FOCC, the investment made by the investment vehicle will be termed as downstream investment. Now, let's understand how we will calculate the amount of indirect foreign investment through an example. In the first example, we can understand that the foreign investor, that is a PROI, has invested 50% in company A and company A has further invested 100% in company B. Here, company A is not an FOCC and therefore any investment made by company A will not be termed as downstream investment. In the second example, we can see that company A is an FOCC and therefore any amount of investment that company A does in any Indian company or LLP will be termed as downstream investment. So in the given case, it is 25%. The calculation will be different when the FOCC is establishing or investing in a wholly owned subsidiary. In that case, we will look at the investment received by the FOCC because here, let's example the same through an example. Here, the PROI has invested only 75% in company A, which means the rest 25% is invested by another person resident in India. Therefore, 75% reflects the foreign funds and 25% reflects the Indian funds. And therefore, the amount of indirect foreign investment in company B will be limited to 75% only. Now, when we are making downstream investment, there are certain compliance requirements that we need to ensure. Here, we'll first understand what is the basic intention of RBI or of government to regulate downstream investment. The main intention is what cannot be done directly should not be done indirectly also. Like, let's say a foreign investor wants to invest in a restricted sector, let's say atomic energy, which is not open for foreign investment. So what the foreign investor would do, he would set up a company in India which is operating into permitted sectors. And this Indian company will further make investments in the company which is into atomic sector, thereby making foreign investment in the restricted sector. And therefore, the government, to not let the foreign investor utilize this loophole, are regulating any downstream investments that is made by an FOCC. So when the FOCC is making downstream investment, it will ensure that a proper board approval is in place and a shareholders agreement is executed if there is any. The funds that he is using for downstream investment should be foreign funds and not Indian funds. That means he can either borrow the money from foreign investors or foreign market, or it can utilize the internal approvals, that is the profits of the company for making downstream investment. But the investor cannot borrow the money from Indian markets. Whenever the investor has made any investment, he will report the same to the RBI by filing Form DI within 30 days of allotment of equity shares and inform Secretariat for Industrial Assistance DPIIT within 30 days of making such investment. The first level Indian entity which is making downstream investment will be responsible to ensure the compliances that it makes. And therefore, if the second level entity is making further downstream investment in a third level company, the second level Indian entity will be responsible to ensure the downstream investment that it makes. The investor will obtain a compliance certificate from the statutory auditor on an annual basis to mention or to state the compliances that it has done regarding the downstream investment. Also, the compliance with such requirements will be mentioned in the director's report of the Indian company. In case the statutory auditor has issued any qualified report, the same will be intimated to the regional RBI office, and an acknowledgement in this regard shall be obtained from the RBI. In case the investor or an FOCC is a bank, it might happen that when the bank has given loan as a security, shares of some company might have been pledged. If the pledge gets invoked, the bank becomes owner of such shares, thereby making such investment as a downstream investment. However, since such kind of transactions are happening as a result of the banking business, and it is not a strategic decision that the bank is undertaking, and therefore such investments which gets triggered as a result of default or as a result of the banking business will not be termed as a downstream investment. If the investor is an LLP, there are certain additional compliance requirements that the LLP will ensure while doing downstream investment. LLP will ensure that in the Indian business or the Indian entity in which it is making downstream investment should be open for 100% FDI through automatic route, and there should be no FDI linked performance conditions. And the same conditions are applicable when the investee is an LLP. That is, whenever an Indian entity is investing in the LLP will ensure that the business of the LLP is open to 100% FDI through automatic route, and there are no FDI linked performance conditions. Additionally, any Indian entity receiving the foreign investments, that is indirect foreign investment, will ensure with the entry route requirements, that is wherever there is any government approval required, the same is obtained. The sectoral caps, that is the maximum amount of foreign investment that is allowed, is maintained. That is, any further investment should not be done which breaches the sectoral caps. Regarding pricing guidelines, whenever the investee is issuing any shares or whenever there is any transfer, pricing guidelines should be complied with. And if there is any FDI linked performance condition mentioned in the rules, the same should be complied with. Now, the investor in some cases might want to transfer his investment in his downstream investment to another person. In that case, if an FOCC is transferring his downstream investment to another person resident outside India, the FOCC will file Form FCTRS that regarding transfer of such investment. However, here the pricing guidelines will not be required to be adhered to. Further, when an FOCC is transferring any downstream investment to a person resident in India, there is no reporting requirement applicable, and the pricing guidelines, however, will be required to be complied with here, since the FOCC is my foreign investor, and here PRII is an Indian investor, and therefore pricing guidelines will be applicable. When a FOCC is transferring downstream investment to another FOCC, there is no reporting requirement that is applicable or any pricing guidelines is applicable. However, the transferee FOCC will file Form DI and inform the same to the DPIIT, since the investment that it has received is a downstream investment, and therefore the FOCC will be required to intimate the same. So this is all about the downstream investment and the compliance requirements for making downstream investment. In case of any queries, you may put the same in the comment section below, and you may refer our resources on FEMA on our website, that is vinodkothari.com.